Legos suck. I mean, look at the mess they just made. And plus, I mean, why would you make a product with such small pieces? Like, who the hell's idea was this? Well, while I figure out what to do with all this, let's talk about Battlefield, the golden child, the god killer, the first-person shooter that was supposed to change everything. What happened? About a week ago, I was surfing my YouTube homepage, scrolling through the endless police body cam footage that YouTube is suddenly recommending me, and I saw something that piqued my interest. And it got me thinking, what the hell? I like this game. I think it's pretty good. I think it's easily the best Battlefield we've had in years. So what's the big deal? And after watching several of these videos, I got some things to say. Now, before we get into this, I don't think you suck. But as I'm going to explain in this video, I unfortunately have to use negativity to trick the YouTube algorithm into recommending you this video. So if you clicked on it and you're still watching, I really appreciate you. Anyway, let's get into the meat and potatoes. Battlefield 6 is arguably one of the most anticipated games over the last few years, and as someone who actually really enjoys the game, I think it was way overhyped. Leading up to the Battlefield 6 beta, people were already saying that this was going to be the game to finally dethrone Call of Duty for being the king of first-person shooters. Before we even got to play, or really even get to see anyone play, this was supposed to be the best Battlefield title since DICE shit the bed with the Battlefield series back in the day, but the hype worked. Up until the end of 2025, Battlefield 6 had close to 700,000 concurrent players. Longtime Battlefield fans came back out of the woodworks, and an entire new audience of people finally were hopping on the Battlefield bandwagon. But then reality hit. People started to get upset when they would lose gunfights. People started to get mad when they would run out of spawn and instantly get sniped. And don't even get me started on getting torn to shreds by a Bradley. Super irritating. So, people started to complain. The hit detection sucks. Snipers have no counter, and the maps are too small, so I'm just constantly running into vehicles. And as someone who's played a decent amount of Battlefield over the years, I totally understand these complaints. But I think we're overlooking one of the key ingredients to the gaming experience here, and that's us, the player. Look, first-person shooters are frustrating. They're highly competitive, and anyone who played some of the older first-person shooter titles where game chat was a lot more popular, you know people love to rage.
It tastes like some big brolic black dude named fucking Raquel.
And what do people do when they rage? They blame everyone, but themselves. And I feel like a lot of the Battlefield 6 complaints are things that people complain about in every game. Let's use hit detection as an example. I don't think I've ever seen a first-person shooter come out where people don't complain about this. I'm going to use Battlefield 4 as a litmus test for a lot of these examples because people claim that's one of the greatest Battlefield titles ever. You can find a lot of posts online about people complaining about the hit detection in that game. So, has hit detection ever been good? It's easy to lose a gunfight you believe you should have won and instantly blame hit detection. But what about when you're doing good? Is the hit detection just suddenly on point? Or are your bullets just luckily going exactly where you're aiming? I couldn't tell you. I don't know how hit detection in video games works. I didn't go to school for that. But what I can tell you is that accountability can go a long way in improving your skills. If hit detection were truly to blame, no one would be able to get good at Battlefield. You couldn't predict where your shots were going to go. But there are a lot of people who are really good at Battlefield. I'm okay at the game, and I feel like the hit detection is pretty decent. On my good days, I'm able to hit shots very reliably. And on my bad days where I'm tired or less focused, my aim suffers. And so does my KD. But I never feel like the game is cheating me out of something that I've earned. I feel fully accountable when my aim is mid or worse. And I also feel fully accountable when my aim is really good. So I try not to complain. I try to look at what I could be doing better as the player. Which brings me to my next point. What is there really to complain about? Most of the complaints I've seen have been the classics. The hit detection, map design, poor game mechanics. And unlike the hit detection example, I actually kind of agree with the map design and some of the game mechanics, but we'll get more into that later in the video. What I want to talk about now are the people who are complaining simply to complain. Now, this is one of the first Battlefield hate videos I saw, and I'd like to point a couple things out. But before we get into that, I'd like to make a disclaimer. In no way am I hating on this guy, and I absolutely do not want you to go and hate on this guy. I think he's a great Battlefield content creator who made some really good points. But there are a few things I'd like to point out in this video that I think highlight a really interesting part about how we hate on games. In this video, he calls out Battlefield 6 for having no suppression mechanics. Like, literally none at all. He claims that using an LMG is completely useless because you can no longer suppress enemies.
I wouldn't mind using an LMG on this game if you had a suppression mechanic, and you haven't. You don't even get score for suppressing enemies.
But that's not the case. In fact, 2 times in the video, it actually says right on a screen, enemy suppressed. If you have played Battlefield 6 or you do a quick Google search, you could see that Battlefield 6 absolutely has suppression mechanics. Now, they work a lot differently than they have in previous Battlefield titles. In Battlefield 6, when you suppress an enemy, they suffer from severe accuracy penalties. In this game, it's a little bit different. Instead of having penalties to your accuracy, you see penalties to your health regeneration, meaning you can't just automatically regenerate health while you're under suppression. This is a change that some people like and some people don't. I personally don't mind it. But whether you like the change or not, to say that there's no enemy suppression in the game is insane. Another thing he brings up a few times in the video is the fact that there are no symbols next to your level in the scoreboard. And if these are the complaints we have about Battlefield 6, I don't see the big issue. If DICE had never added that feature to Battlefield 4, it would have changed absolutely nothing about the gameplay or the fact that that's one of the best Battlefield titles of all time. Would it be cool to have? For sure. But again, if these are the complaints we have about Battlefield 6, I think we're headed in the right direction. There were so many things wrong with 2042 and previous Battlefield titles that were genuinely concerning for the franchise. So if our biggest issues now are this small, like I said, I think we're headed in the right direction. I want to say this again, no hate to this guy at all. I think he's an amazing Battlefield content creator. I'll leave links to his channel in the description so you can go ahead and check him out for yourself. Another big complaint people have is that this game doesn't have the classic Battlefield feel. What classic feel? Something I think people fail to do is show gameplay from these older games to support their claims. So let's go ahead and do that real quick.
Here we are, good old Battlefield 4. Wow, this game has died on console. This is crazy. But yeah, first thing I want to bring up is the server browser, right? A lot of people complain that there's no server browser in Battlefield 6. I believe there is actually a server browser in Battlefield 6. Now, it's not the main way to join, kind of like it was in this game, although there is quick match in this game as well. But the menu's set up a little differently in Battlefield 6. I think it's set up very similar to Call of Duty and Fortnite, which is a bit unfortunate, I will admit. One thing I do want to say about the server browser, speaking from experience, is that it is a bit confusing. It's not as player-friendly as you might think. As someone who played a lot of Battlefield, I'm very familiar with the server browser, so I don't think it's that hard to navigate or use, but I had a friend that was trying to get into Battlefield before Battlefield 6. We were playing a lot of 2042, and I wanted them to see what this game was really all about. So I was like, dude, we gotta go back. We gotta play Battlefield 4. Brought him back to this. He didn't know how to join me. We just started a share screen so that I could show him like how to navigate the server browser. And Battlefield has been a struggling series recently. You know, I think they're trying to pull new players into the game. Obviously, the long-time loyal fan base is starting to die a little bit. Granted, we haven't had a great entry to the series in a while, but, you know, they had to come up with something to do, and I think their idea was that maybe they would cater to newer players. That is my kind of main point to the video. It's that, you know, people want to complain because the game wasn't made specifically for them as an individual, but you can choose to play the game how you want. You know, if you want to use the server browser and you don't want to use all that other stuff, just use the server browser. You know, I get that that's not the whole point of the game, and a lot of people want it like, oh, that's just how it should be. It should just be the server browser, but why? You know, don't you think there are other people who prefer it some other way? And even if you prefer it that way, you can still do it, right? But should we be leaving the people out who don't want it that way? I don't know. Which brings me to kind of another point, something people complain about in Battlefield 6, which I also do understand, and that's the fact that any class can use any weapon. That's something that wasn't a thing in, you know, Battlefield 4, but again, you know, I think it's to make the game more accessible to everyone, right? And not everyone's a hardcore gamer who's played thousands of hours of Battlefield and is going to get onto this and, you know, just start playing and, you know, get used to all of it. You know, maybe they want to experiment with using an assault rifle in a recon class. Maybe they want to experiment with using a sniper in the assault class, right? Now, I get that's not the classic Battlefield feel that we want or that we're looking for, but is that necessarily a big deal? And again, like I said about the server browser thing, there are game modes that you can play where they do restrict the weapons, just like they did in good old Battlefield 4 here. Another thing people complain about Battlefield 6 is the small maps. But this is a great example of a small map. I mean, this isn't a huge map at all. I think there are maps that are bigger than this in Battlefield 6. You know, there are small maps in this game too. Operation Locker was one of my favorite maps in this game, a really popular map. That map didn't even have vehicles on it. You know, it was a tiny map. It was pure raw chaos, and I loved it, right? Now, there are some bigger maps in Battlefield 4, and Battlefield 6 is lacking in the big map department, but I think there are some things they could have borrowed from Battlefield 4 that would have made the game better. But I don't think the game's bad. I don't think the game's bad at all. I think it's a great game. I think it's the closest we've had to the Battlefield 4 experience in a long time. As I said earlier, I don't think these games are really all that different. They're not exactly what we want for sure, but it's just not that bad of a game. It's actually a really good game. It's really not all that different than what I'm playing right now, right? People do the same thing in this game that they do in that game. They hide in corners, they lay in corners, right? They do crazy things. There's not a lot of counters to the snipers. The vehicles can shred you from, so easily, but that is the Battlefield charm, right? That is Battlefield. That is the way the game works. It's how it's always been, right? I have yet to see an example where people go back and play Battlefield 4 and say, see, like this is what I'm talking about, because they're not all that different. You can complain all you want about what you have, or you can appreciate it for what it is. Well, that's about all I have to say. Back to you, Zach.
I think nostalgia is tricking us into thinking that these Battlefield games were the cream of the crop video games that were literally perfect. But when you go back and play them, they're really not all that different. And if Battlefield hadn't changed at all, if they continued to just make the same game every year, people would complain about that. They'd say that Battlefield just makes the same game every year, that it's so repetitive and boring. People will always find something to complain about. Now, I can't make an entire video about accountability in gaming and not acknowledge the facts that are provided to me. Battlefield 6 is dying. They've seen a severe drop-off in that 700,000 concurrent player count. So there's some genuine criticism that I'd like to bring up, mainly being maps and post-launch content. Now, I'm not totally on the side of this game lacking content just yet. This is the most content we've seen at launch in a while. Plus, the game's only been out for a few months, and we have already seen a few maps being added to the game. But I think the maps that are coming out, some of the maps that are in the game, are a bit lame. The maps could be a lot bigger, and even some of the smaller maps could use a bit better design or a bit better layout. Blackwell Fields is a great example of a map where it's hard to counter snipers, one of the complaints I brought up earlier in the video. A lot of the anti-sniper measures don't really work on this map due to a major lack in cover. And although we have had some post-launch support, it's not unlike DICE to completely abandon a Battlefield project. Think back to 2042. We still don't know what DICE has in plan, and that concerns me. We used to get roadmaps when games came out. Does anyone remember that? It would be a little map showing you what the developers had in plan over the next year or so. Maybe they didn't always hit those deadlines exactly, or we didn't get exactly what was in there, but at least we know they had plans to give us more content. And that's something that the gaming industry in general is lacking right now, not just Battlefield, leaving players curious and concerned if their favorite game is ever going to get an update. But I'd like to ask a question. Why is that such an issue? Why do we need new content? Why can't we have fun with the game that already came out? Back in the early days of gaming, games didn't get updates. You bought the disc and that was it. That was the game. You could argue that games are a lot more expensive nowadays, and for sure they are. But the games are also a lot more detailed and take a lot longer to develop. I think it comes back down to the player. We are so used to getting content drop after content drop, always having something new to look forward to. Millions of videos get uploaded to TikTok every day, so you can constantly stimulate your brain with new content. So when you get on Battlefield after a whole month of playing and there's nothing new, you just instantly say the game sucks because the developers haven't made anything new for you. We're no more than spoiled children who don't want to go outside anymore because they've rotted their brains on the iPad. I think Battlefield 6 is a great game, and I think it has serious potential to become one of the best Battlefield titles over time. I think people expected way more out of the game than they got, and they kicked it to the side to play something new. And I think that's why the game is already dying. Look, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Battlefield 6 does suck. Maybe you do have perfect aim, and you have the ability to expose the hit detection issue. Maybe there is no enemy suppression, and this is all just a government psyop to make me make this video. But it's all about your opinion. And I just wanted to show some of the evidence I've collected from this Battlefield and previous titles to help support mine. Again, I don't think anyone actually sucks, but unfortunately, that's the state of our world. Negativity gets views on YouTube, television, the news. People would rather hear a story about how a billionaire lost all of his money than how he made it. So of course, all of the videos online talking about this trending video game are going to be negative. But someone's got to give DICE a pat on the back for this one. Battlefield has been suffering for years, and we're finally taking a step in the right direction. I'm not saying that this game is perfect by any means, but it's the best we've got right now. And if we keep telling them that this game sucks, we're gonna fall right back off that path. I would love to see a future where Battlefield finally puts COD in the ground for good, but that's not gonna happen if we just keep shitting on the people who make the game. Just like these Legos sitting in front of me. It's not about the mess that was made. It's about what we make of it. And I made a gun. Now say Battlefield is good. Anyway, that's enough yapping for today. Again, all love to the guy I mentioned in this video. Like I said, I think he's a great creator. I'll leave links to the video I mentioned and his channel in the description so you can go and check him out. And if you made it this far in the video and you haven't yet, please consider subscribing. I'm trying to make it 300 subs. I also want to just say really quick, thank you for all the support on my last video. If you haven't checked that out yet, I'll leave a link somewhere on the screen that you can click. I didn't expect it to do as well as it did, and I really appreciate all the love and feedback I've been getting from that, so thanks for that. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have some Legos to clean up.